France goes to the polls in just 23 days, and Emmanuel Macron, the French president, has just unveiled his manifesto. If re-elected, Macron says he will prioritise tax cuts, reforms to the welfare system and more public investment. He's been holding his first major political campaign event in unveiling a platform aimed at deepening pro-business reforms started in 2017 and with the ambition of reducing high levels of unemployment. He's acknowledged that he hasn't been able to push through the pension overhaul that he promised back in 2017. One of the things he says he wants to do is make sure the unemployed undertake 15 to 20 hours of work or training per week.
La réforme que je propose est différente de celle de 2017 parce que les conditions macroéconomiques ne sont pas les mêmes, parce que le pays continue à se transformer, notre environnement aussi, parce que je tire aussi les enseignements de ce qui n'avait pas été compris. Et donc, à cet égard, la réforme que je souhaite mener, c'est d'augmenter l'âge légal progressivement, comme on l'a toujours fait d'ailleurs, avec un système de trimestre progressif, mais donc de mener cet âge légal jusqu'à 65 ans.
Rival parties have been struggling to cut through with the ongoing Russian invasion of Ukraine dominating headlines. In the last 5 weeks, Emmanuel Macron's held 20 hours of talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Macron's popularity, according to the polls, has improved in the run-up to the election. Ross Cullen joins me live from our Paris bureau now. And Ross, what do we think explains that rise in Macron's popularity according to those polling numbers in recent weeks?
Hi Ollie, yes, he was unveiling that platform just outside Paris in the northern suburbs of the city. Over the last couple of weeks, you're right, we have seen the polls supporting President Macron with a rise in his support, maybe now even touching, gaining 30% of the first round votes in the presidential election. We can tie that mostly to the idea of the so-called rally round the flag in times of serious crisis after the COVID-19 pandemic. Now we have a war in Europe. President Macron has been one of the leading figures within the European Union and the Western alliance in trying to maintain pressure on Russia and support for Ukraine. And despite the fact that he has had all those calls with President Putin, and there's another one coming up today, haven't yet been able to find a peaceful solution. Just maintaining that dialogue has shown that he is willing to try to keep that diplomatic path open. There have been some problematic issues for some of his rivals. Marine Le Pen on the extreme right had to throw away more than 1 million of her printed campaign leaflets because they featured a colour splash of her shaking hands with Vladimir Putin. That is no longer a message that her team want to be able to put forward to the electorate. And we have heard from Eric Zemmour. He's another of Marine Le Pen's actual rivals on the far right. He has previously said in the past that what France needs is a French Putin to sort the country out. Those comments coming back to haunt him, and that campaign leaflet of Marine Le Pen's having to be thrown away because of that photo of her with Vladimir Putin.
And Ross, on that idea of Emmanuel Macron not having done much campaigning up to this point, given that we're just 3 weeks out from the first round of voting and his popularity, as you say, appears to be on the rise, should we expect over the next 2 or 3 weeks to see less of him on the campaign trail and more on that diplomatic trail instead?
Well, Ollie, the deadline to submit your candidacy for the French presidential election, the first round is on the 10th of April, that deadline was the 4th of March, and we got as late as the 2nd of March. And Emmanuel Macron still had not announced that he was going to run for re-election. He left it until the very last minute, coming to a matter of hours before confirming his candidacy. He was spending as much of his time, almost all his time, on phone calls with Volodymyr Zelensky, with Vladimir Putin, with Joe Biden and other Western allies. If he wasn't in Paris, he was in Brussels for summits and meetings. So he was really trying to show that he is trying to deal with this war first and foremost foremost, and then after that, then campaigning. It's going to be a lightning campaign. As we said, the 10th of April is the first round. Everybody gets to take part, and then the top two candidates from the first round go through to the second round runoff 2 weeks later towards the end of April. So not much time left. There are going to be some campaign events, but not as many as previously. Also, it's not going to be as boisterous a campaign as previous elections. Understandably, this long lead-in with lots of debates and rancorous, that has all just been overwhelmed by the war in Ukraine and the fact that France is having to join with other major European Union powers like Germany to try to deal with this issue on the eastern borders of the European Union. So there are going to be a few campaign events, far fewer than normal. Emmanuel Macron is going to be doing a bit of campaigning, but his number one priority remains trying to support Western allies in trying to find a peaceful resolution to this war in Ukraine, starting with, this afternoon, Paris time, his latest phone call with the Kremlin.
Ross Cullen in Paris, thank you.